try again.
What's up? I'm Gabriel Saint, a writer, artist, director working out of Los Angeles, California. I'm with Derrick Denicola, and today we're having a conversation with Samantha Duncan,
Hello.
writer, production designer. Would you like to say a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. Yeah. I do production design and set decoration. I mostly work in film and commercials, but a little bit of theater here and there. No game design, but I know a lot of you guys are into that, so we can definitely chat about it. And yeah, I write as well. That's how I met Derrick at Austin Film Festival. And yeah, I'm excited to chat.
Oh, so let's talk about a little bit about that. How y'all met at the Austin Film Festival. That's a good place to start, I think.
Sure. I think it was at the barbecue,
Yeah.
one of the official AFF events.
Yeah, definitely very Austin to have like the barbecue.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of writers with like
With like
barbecue
plates
sauce
of
fingers.
barbecue.
Yeah, like you right? And like, yeah, me too. We should get each other's, we should probably find a place to sit down so we can
Yeah.
exchange information.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, it was
not
so
at all
awkward.
to just talk to people, but
Yeah, barbecue sauce on your fingers is
Yeah.
not very conducive to writing.
yeah, no, definitely not.
It is the right
I feel like that's the thing at AFF is like you just like meet people in line and like it's really. I mean, for me, it wasn't like the events or the parties even. It was literally
The line.
waiting in line.
Yeah, that's
So
So build a little context here. Derrick and Samantha both submitted screenplays to the Austin Film Festival, both placed in the Austin Film Festival. And when they went to the Austin Film Festival to receive their awards, at film festivals, they often have little parties, little gatherings. What they have, like, what do you call this? The little convention,
Networking events.
networking events, yeah, where you can meet other writers.
Yeah.
And that's what they're describing right now is a barbecue that must have been a networking event at AFF where people are just like there to meet other writers, I guess. So let's talk a little bit, Sam, about the, how you say it?
yeah, of course.
A little bit about the project that got you to AFF.
Sure. Yeah, it was a comedy pilot about scuba divers and kayakers competing for pool space. So I lived in New York for like 8 years, and I went to school in New York. Actually, I went to school in Manhattan, and I was kind of inspired by the scarcity of kind of places to do water sports there. I actually had the experience where like I went to my friend's kayaking club, and it was actually on a pool, and that seed kind of just stayed with me. So I was sort of like, well, what if multiple water sports are competing for the same space? Like New York's an island, or Manhattan is, but there's really nowhere to do water sports. It's the Hudson's kind of not it.
I remember during COVID as well, I saw some sort of like little local news special where people in New York were lining dumpsters with this queen and then turning them into their own like little public pools.
I missed that one.
Yeah, and it was like a new take on dumpster diving here in New York City.
Wow.
But it's amazing how you can see something like that and say, that's something. I'm gonna turn this into something.
So the hook here is that you have a private pool at a college, a small college who's probably underfunded and too many students. And the catalyst here, the conflict here is that you have a scuba team who's practicing in the school swimming pool, which is kind of a little ridiculous.
It's a little ridiculous.
But then
yes.
you also have a kayak team
Which is also ridiculous.
who also be in the same swimming pool.
Yeah.
So the conflict in this story is between the scuba divers and the kayakers who are fighting for time at the swimming pool. So it's really the age-old story of like nerds versus jocks, except we've kind of shifted it to kayakers versus scuba divers, right?
Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's, they get double booked, and, eventually they realize that the swimmers are getting more time than them combined, and they team up. But yeah, not in the pilot.
Right, and like my first thought was they should. The end has got to be that they learn how to share the pool. Like they're literally kayaking over the scuba divers because they both are using different levels. There's got to be something terrible that goes wrong. I'm sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's a pilot though, so you don't resolve some of those things.
No, it's sort of, you kind of end it with the conflict.
Starting, yeah, because in
Yeah.
my mind, the answer is they need to realize that the enemy is not each other, but
Yeah.
the larger oppressive issue that's not funding their schools
Sure.
and giving them the pull they need, or like the education system. So instead of taking the arguments out of
Yeah.
each other,
The evil dean.
they should come together as a kayak and swim team because they're all the pool team.
Yeah.
And the
for
pool
sure.
team rallies to raise the money to make a bigger pool or something. You know, and that's indicative of a good story. Me and Derek always talk about when there's a good, fun story, like,
Everybody wants to jump on.
yeah, I got an ending for that. I got an ending for that.
I love it.
Like, if the story's not very intriguing, everybody's like, okay, and then now what?
Yeah, then like, okay.
And if it's a good story,
You can see, yeah, you can kind of see, yeah, for sure. Thank you.
it's a good, very good fundamental story.
When you write a pilot, how far do you go? Do you like build a pitch deck for it or like a show Bible, or do you just stop at the pilot and go, this was my spec pilot episode and I'm done, and I set it aside and work on the next?
Sure, it kind of depends on what I want to do with it. So right now I'm more focused on building writing samples than I am on selling anything specific. So I'm not as likely to do a Bible. I have like a little Bible for that one, but not like a full Bible. It's like only like 7 pages.
You
or
talking about like a
something.
pitch deck for the...
For the pilot, for the show.
Sure. So you're saying you don't build pitch decks just yet?
Not generally. For that one, I have like a short show Bible. So like the show Bible would be sort of like what happens in upcoming episodes and like stuff about characters and like a lot of extra information that would be used to build a series. Whereas I think like a pitch deck's, that's a lot of, will have that information, but like the show Bible is more of a tool for like fleshing things out than it is this.
How much of a crossover is it for you as a production designer who is writing, whenever you're writing, being like, if I were to give myself this production designer job, but I want to do it, like, do I want to dress small pool and like the kayak center or whatever?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, a little bit. I definitely have thought about, it's hard not to think about the production design. For that one, like, I think, since it's set at a campus, like if it were to shoot at a campus, then I don't think the production design would be a crazy lift. I think obviously doing anything in water is really difficult. Like that's logistically very challenging.
They say no children or
but,
no pets.
yeah. But like, I think like dorm rooms, like if you're thinking big picture, like budget wise, like aren't necessarily the heaviest lift, because like dorm furniture is pretty.
Or I guess I guess my real question too is like, I'm just figuring out, but like how much does production design influence your writing? Do you find yourself like ever getting hung up in the descriptions of your environment and being like, no, I just need to
A
write?
little bit, but it's sort of actually very freeing because I know that it's going to change. Like, so in a script, like I definitely pay more attention to like the set and what the set's saying in the story. Like I always try to add like a line or two at least about colors or, how messy it is depending on like what I'm describing. But I do know that like I should only tell as much as tells the story, and that down the line, someone else is gonna change it.
Yeah.
Like, if I were to hire a production designer for something, like that person would have their own vision and they would maybe see it differently than me, and that's also okay. So it's a little dance of, I think, providing enough information that like a producer could understand what you're getting at, but not like over telling. Similar to like with characters, like in actions, like you don't necessarily want to direct on the page too much. Like you don't want to say exactly how our characters are emoting all the time with like parentheticals. Like you also don't necessarily, in my opinion, want to do that with the set. Like, and like too much dense text also kind of slows things down too. So
Yeah.
I think two parts of that question is like, number one, like we almost start pitch deck forward. Like we'll almost build a pitch deck to say, is this worth continuing into a script? Because that way you can see the logo, you can see some colors, you can put together a couple actors and say, well, I see what this film's gonna look like. And you maybe even play a little song in the background.
Sure.
And say like, oh, that's not the movie I want to spend the next year writing or 3 years shooting and developing or whatever it is. So sometimes we'll start with a pitch deck. So I think kind of where that question might come from. The thing we do when we're writing is we kind of ask ourselves, are we producing this script?
Right.
Or are we writing a script to, be produced? Yeah, be produced by another production company. And a lot of that is like, when you're asking like, as a production designer, am I writing a production design that I know that I can do, or am I writing a script that I know that I'm able to produce myself? Or it's like, hey, I wrote a water slide into this scene. And, as a production designer, you're like, it's gonna be difficult for me to do the water. But if somebody else is producing,
For sure. It's really nice when you just get to come up with ideas
Yes,
and not execute them. That is a great thing about writing.
and we kind of divide. And I'm always like, Derek, like, let's focus on something like we can point a camera at all times.
Yeah.
Derek's like, well, hey man, sometimes maybe we can write some great scripts that we aren't able to point a camera at, but somebody else might. So we kind of take our stories and put them into like two different camps.
Yeah.
Things
That's smart.
that we know that we can deal with, and some scripts that are like, that's gonna be a headache for someone else.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yeah. I definitely write, well, not all the time, but like so definitely in my writing, I will write things that I know would be difficult for me to execute, and like a lot of the scripts have not, if I would like to produce them, they're not necessarily going to be in the immediate future. Sometimes, like right now I am focused on like having writing samples.
Sure.
So the nice thing about that is, I don't have to worry about production right now. I could always,
Yeah, and as a writer, like that's how Derek wants to write. Derek's like, I don't want to worry about production.
you can always walk it back later, like in like cut locations and like, you ask yourself if you really need a fifth set or if that can happen at one of the other sets, but definitely like in early drafts, I prefer to have a little bit of freedom. Maybe it's because as a production designer, I'm so like married to the logistics, and I'm always, trying to figure out how many camera angles we're getting and how much of the room we have to dress, It's like, if you're only seeing half the room, you can maybe spend half as much money.
Oh yeah. Have
So
much time.
Are you a master of the French turnaround?
I wouldn't say a master.
Well, we are.
You are?
Yes.
That's all we do.
We've done a French turnaround. Matter of fact, we were doing French turnarounds before we figured out it was called a French turnaround.
Yeah.
And then we were like, this is a French turnaround?
That's what everybody was
That's what we've been doing?
I one time worked on a project that was set in New York but shot in LA. Actually, I've done multiple of those. But like this particular one, like we shot outside a bit and they were really focused on framing out the palm trees. So there was a lot of like me just flipping the entire set so that we could get the part of the sky without the palm trees.
What do you mean flipping this? Oh, just
Just like completely doing like,
like a 180 and still avoiding palm trees.
like couches facing this direction, not facing that direction for the coverage.
I mean, we shot multiple films using a garage. Derek, you should put the French turnaround maybe in the Discord. I'll open up the
It is already.
in the chat or in the Discord.
Both.
And Astayu, if you're on the chat with us, if you got any questions, feel free to ask. But a French turnaround is when you use the same background for two different shots. And what you do is you change the dressing, change the sofa, the paintings, whatever it is, so that it appears to be two different sides of the same room. If somebody's watching this that doesn't know what a French turnaround is. But we shot multiple movies, and a lot of it we used
The same fucking wall.
this mother-in-law suite. It's like a detached garage that they have here in Los Angeles. I don't see them a lot of other places, but I see them everywhere in Los Angeles. And I was living in this detached garage that had been converted into like a little studio apartment. But one of the walls is a garage door.
Oh, yep.
One of the walls had,
French doors.
and then the other wall was like the kitchen. So all I had was one freestanding, regular-looking wall. That particle board, not particle board. What's it called? What's a wall made out of? Drywall. Yeah, only one wall, just like normal drywall. So we would have to like change the painting, change the camera, change the lighting again, shoot one actor, and not only that, we'd only have one actor at a time. So
Yeah.
we'd send that actor home. The next day, another actor would show up because we redress the entire background, so it's a whole different shot, and then let them watch the footage. The actor we shot the previous day, and they could act across from that.
Oh,
And,
interesting. Indie filmmaking. I love
it worked. It worked.
And it worked really well.
Amazingly. Like there's times where it's like, wow, this looks really good. Like we're really proud of some of the stuff we pulled off.
That's great.
But man, it feels so good to get into a new location where you're like, look at all these walls.
Yeah.
You know, and like, look at all these different corners. And well, like, now we'll just turn the camera. It'll be so cool.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing, like, you know, when we write films, we're talking about trying to produce them ourselves. Like, let's write one location, 2 characters in one location. But you don't realize, like, how much energy you get from moving to a new location. So if you spend 30 days at one location, everybody's going to, like, lose all their energy. And every time you get a company to move, everybody's like, fresh new star, you know? And that's
It's like putting on a fresh pair of socks.
we were like, no, it'd be much easier if we just shoot at one place, you know? And then it's
Sure.
like, oh, it gets a little grueling. It starts to get a little grueling.
Yeah, for sure.
I think something I would be interesting maybe trying to talk about, and maybe that'll lead us into maybe Derrick's game a little bit, but like looking at production design through a storytelling lens, and like from a gamer's perspective, or from like Asteyu, the guy Mitch who's in the chat right now, who is a game developer. Like, how do you look at a story and tell the story through the way you dress the environment? You know, so like you could just pick maybe any story, any script or something, and like, how would you tell the story through the objects of it?
Or do you have like a ritual or a process where it's like a bunch of boxes that you have to tick in order to formulate your...
I mean, usually I start with the script and like I'll do a breakdown of the script and I'll literally just write everything that's scripted for kind of each set and like, you know, everything that's scripted for props as well. And that'll be like my starting point, just what's there. And then from there, I start to like ideate and brainstorm on my own and like add the things I think that are needed. So it depends on the set. I think personal spaces can be a little more interesting to do. Like, you know, a restaurant's fun. Like you can say things about that space, but you're not saying anything about a character. And like at the end of the day, I think like storytelling really is driven by characters. So like when you get into the personal spaces, I think that's when...
What about in those instances where the location is almost a character in itself, like the hotel in The Shining comes
Sure.
from, or something like that?
Yeah, I mean that's fun too.
Yeah, like if a space was like, let's say, haunted,
Yeah.
and like it had its own kind of story, like what kind of brainstorming do you do for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts in like, in that case, theme instead of character. So what's the story trying to say about the space, right? Because the space isn't just, it's not there just to be cool, right? Like it's written into the script because it fits into the theme somehow. So like, you know, what's the theme and then how can we evoke that in the space? So
And about character, can you tell me maybe a little bit about, like, if we just focused in on an object in a room, like a couch or a bed room, like if it's a personal area, like like a bedroom, give me some decisions you would make that would say something about the character. Like I would make this decisions if it was a male who likes sports, or this decision,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like, how are you defining characters, the items in that?
definitely. I mean, I like to make a joke about how every man's bedroom in a film has like navy blue sheets. Like if you just like,
That's funny.
if you just
That's
like
a
keep
funny thing to
watching,
notice.
like,
Yeah.
like, or, but yeah, no, definitely like I would start, you know, by breaking down the character and like their traits. Is the character messy or clean? Like, do they have a lot of money or not? Do they have hobbies? So like if I'm thinking about a couch, if a character's wealthier, I would get maybe a new couch. You know, if a character's, you know, struggling a bit money wise, then maybe I get one that's like not new or a little beat up. I've heard like production designers say like if you get a TV from the year your film set, like that's usually not good because most people don't have TVs that they bought that year.
Right.
I mean, like some people do, but it's a point you're making a
I
point.
feel like I've heard that there's like a French term for that or something, right? And it just means like, just because it's set in 1995 doesn't mean everything that the person owns is from
Isn't, yeah, no,
It's like from
definitely not.
Everything would be from before night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
right.
technically. You know, another thing I noticed is like if you do like a period film from like the 70s,
Sure.
sometimes from the 80s, sometimes they'll be wearing vintage distressed clothes. And in my mind, I'm thinking that those clothes wouldn't be distressed in the 80s yet, but they're dressed in like authentic clothing from the time. But that clothing is now 50, 60
Right,
years
it would be new if
Right,
it were
or
80s
refreshed
clothing,
versions
right?
and
And like
so
if they
forth.
have distressed clothing, it might be earlier.
Yeah, it
like
would need to be from the
70s
'60s.
or-
You wouldn't
yeah,
have, if you were in the '80s, you wouldn't be wearing distressed clothes from the '80s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'd be
for
wearing
sure.
distressed clothes from the '70s,
For sure.
'60s.
I worked on something that was set in the 70s, and I definitely got stuff from the 50s because, like, I was like, these people have been in this house for decades. They haven't replaced every single thing in their home. So, like, you think about that stuff too. Like, how long has this person been living here? If it's been like a couple years, then maybe they do have mostly new stuff if they bought stuff when they moved. But if they've been somewhere a couple decades, like, you have to show that in like the technology and
That's
that too.
That's a great point. Maybe we can try a little. We're working on a project here, and it's like a detective story that takes place in southern Louisiana. Do you know what a shotgun home is? These old wooden homes in Louisiana that are built long,
Cool.
and like they, instead of like tall, and they're usually built up on stilts, you know, in case there's a flood. But it's just like a long shotgun home, and you know, these people may have lived in these homes for generations. You know, and it's in Louisiana. It's very kind of a country. But I was wondering, like, how would you maybe start with something like that? Dressing a home like that.
I mean, that sounds fun. Yeah, I think, you know, if they've been in the home for generations, I would probably look at like the family kind of interconnectivity and how they feel about each other. Because, you know, if the current generation has a lot of reverence and respect for the previous generations, they're going to treat the things in the home differently than if they don't.
That's an interesting angle. Yeah, keep on.
Yeah.
Don't.
So yeah, I mean, like, you know, do they have family heirlooms around because they value those things, or have they gotten rid of them? And is it just an old home that's been like modernized in what's inside of it, or like, do they have money to replace the furniture? If they don't respect the previous generations and they don't have money, then I imagine like a lot of the stuff would be worn out and like very dated. But if they do respect the generation, then like that stuff would be kept nice.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I love the economy of a small town like that. Like, can be just in like making those specific choices can really help build out the world that we're talking about. Like, now it's giving me ideas, but you know, that's why I'm glad we have you on here, because there's sometimes I don't know the questions to ask.
Reminds me of when Squeaka said, if I'm not Squeaka, Carissa said,
Yeah.
when I need to dress a character, the first thing she says she asks is, where do they shop? And I was like, oh, I would have never even thought about that. I would think of like the people in the area, what do they do for a living? And she was like, well, that's cool and all, but like my end is that, do they shop at Walmart? Do they shop at, you know, Gucci?
yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah.
And I think intentionality says so much. Like, you could just grab a couch and put it in there, and it's fine, it works. But when you add an intention to something, for some reason, people notice. You know what I mean? That's why, like, those Sumi ink drawings is like a guy that's been painting swipes for 100 years can do the perfect ink swipe, and everybody's like, wow, it's beautiful. But then when I tried to do it, it looks like I spilled my coffee.
Yeah. It also makes me think of I was thinking of the Men in Black sequence with the egg chairs whenever they have all of the guys that are filling out their forms, and they purposefully choose uncomfortable furniture that, you know, like people are like in the egg chair to warm, and
Cable, yeah.
and I was like, there's something about whatever that, I wonder if that was in the script or if that was a brilliant idea of the set designer.
But I mean, whatever it could be both, because like somebody's got to say, hey, Will Smith has to, in this moment, his character has to show how resourceful he is. So I was like, ooh, I got it. Let's put everybody in like these uncomfortable situations. Nobody can figure out the whole right. And this one guy does the obvious thing and drags the table over. And not only was it beautiful how uncomfortable and stupid those chairs were, but like the auditory gag of dragging that. Because every time somebody drags a chair or something across the room, everybody brings up that particular scene. I would like to get back to like some of the stuff we were talking about, though, like with the shotgun houses in Louisiana. So let's say there's multiple homes, okay? So as a production designer, you're told, hey, we're gonna go into 3 of these 7 homes, and maybe we'll get feel a little bit of the inside of the other ones, but they won't be as camera won't see them. Like, how do you say differentiate these homes? Like, I know you said at first, like maybe if people were really into their family heritage, that they might
Preserve the heirlooms.
right. And if sorry, I lied.
Yeah.
I'm moderating the chat.
You're good.
And if they don't have reverence for the past, maybe if they have new stuff, but you have like 3 or 4 homes, how would you describe a difference?
Yeah, I think it would come down to character for in that case. I'd also ask if they want to be living in those homes, right? Because, some of them might be really into them and love them, and some of them might be trying to disguise them, I think it just depends on who the characters are. But, maybe someone changes the wallpaper or puts wallpaper up and it's really bright and different than the rest of the space because that person is leaning into like a more modern aesthetic.
That is amazing. I feel like that's another Carissa moment where I would never have asked, does this person even want to be living in that space? I just assume this is their space. But you're right. Like if it was like a terrible shotgun home and it was all they can afford, but they didn't really want to be there, maybe like the juxtaposition of like a really like modern new TV from Best Buy trying to zhuzh up, a pigsty essentially.
Yeah, I mean, maybe someone hangs macrame in their space. Like that wouldn't necessarily fit, but like if they're trying to change the space, like they might do something like that.
If someone likes their space, they put plants in it.
That's neat. There you go.
It's like sometimes you can tell when people don't care, like, your bed might be on the floor. You might not even have a cow, an end table, but like when people really love their house, they've got everything in place and they're like, you know what I need now?
They nurture it.
Plants.
Yeah.
Because that's like, you have to literally put time and love into your home if there's plants in it, because they're living, makes your house a living being. Yeah.
And plants also look great on camera.
Plants do look great on camera, and so do light bulbs.
Yes, these light bulbs are very pretty.
Do you know a lot about feng shui, and do you like ever apply like principles of home decoration or interior design to your set decoration?
I mean, personally, I don't get too much into feng shui, but I think if a character were into feng shui, then the space would need to reflect it.
Right.
So
are you like prepared if they're like, this person is like really into feng shui, go for it?
I might have to do a little bit of research. I think I know a few things. I think like the head of the bed's not supposed to be by the door, things like that. But I don't think I know enough that I would be able to go in blind in feng shui space. I'd have to look up and do research, and that's a big part of production design as well, is doing a bit of research on,
I think a good point here is that it doesn't matter what you like.
Yeah.
It's all about what the character likes. So you're like, hey, do you like to use feng shui? And she was like, well, it doesn't sometimes, but it depends on if the character wants to use it.
It's all about the character. I mean, like I don't think that certainly every project I've worked on hasn't fit my personal taste. Like, not that I wasn't necessarily proud of what I did, but like, I'm proud if it fits the character, not if it fits my personal aesthetic, because my aesthetic's very different than most characters. People are very different from each other.
And musicians call that serving the song.
There you
yourself,
go.
I mean, you don't want to play a good guitar part. You want to play a good part for the song,
For sure.
And that's kind of how it is, like serving the story, I guess, is really what it is.
Yeah.
We got a couple questions. Rose just joined us from Texas. She's currently in
Hi,
school.
Rose.
So is Mitch is also in art school, and they're just on a break from school. Rose asked a question of, I'm gonna ask a couple of these questions, and we'll just take them at one at a time. Let's just take them one. First question is from Rose: what got you into production design?
Oh, that's a good one. I was always interested in film, and I studied visual arts in school. So I worked in advertising for a bit, but when I was finally ready to take the leap into film, it felt like art department just made sense, because I felt like the skill set I already had fit that department the best. And then...
So you're saying you went to school, you said?
Yeah, I studied visual arts, like fine arts, kind of like...
Where at?
Columbia.
Columbia? And what did you major in?
Art history and visual arts.
Yeah. Very cool. Cool.
Thank you. But yeah, I just thought my background kind of fit art department best. And then, when it was finally time to try it, that's what I tried first, and it kind of stuck. I realized I liked it, and I really enjoy doing sets, and it's fun.
So how long have you been here in Los Angeles?
Coming up on 4 years, like between 3.5 and 4 years.
And you were working in film before you came here?
A bit, yeah. So I did work in film a bit when I was in New York, which was very different because, no one has a car.
Right.
I mean, you will drive in New York.
Did you ever rent a U-Haul every time you had a location?
Yeah, pretty much. That is what people would do. They'd like rent vans or like even just personal cars. Like if you work on a show in New York, like I was not the art director on the show, but like back then, but like they would rent like the art director a car or the production designer a car. And then there might be like a general art department car. So like, or a general production car. So they'd like just rent vehicles.
Productions?
Yeah, I was like an assistant on a like an art assistant on a TV show when I worked in New York, and literally some of what I'd have to do is like the production designer's car was out of gas, I'd go fill it up, or I had to pick something up. I had to pick things up in like random places sometimes, or I made a lot of returns in Manhattan,
Nice.
and they would give me a car, but like parking is, tough. You spend so much money on parking, making returns.
I was actually picturing you like slogging something onto the subway car.
No, they would at least on a big show they'll give you can drive,
And that's the thing they don't warn you for. If you're interested in working in the art department in a film, 90% of it is returning things that you didn't use or that you did use and were able to put the price tag back on. Was not prepared for that.
Yeah, and like, on like and especially if you're doing rentals, like also a huge part of it is just making sure things get returned to the right place and like in good condition, and you have to keep a truck organized with furniture from multiple sets and stuff, which can be challenging.
Yeah. Ugh.
Another question we have here, I think what Astay was asking is like, what kind of techniques. I've seen Astay's building a horror environment, and he's doing the things where he's got like a light that's flashing in the background on the door that's just barely cracked open. And you can kind of push the door open just a little bit to see what's going on in that room. And maybe like what could you do in an environment to kind of make it feel like have psychological tension or pull that would rely on a jump scare or something, but just like the location,
Yeah, I mean, I think there can be, it depends on like the specifics of your story a little bit, but I think there can be something uncanny about just making small changes to a space, or like there's always something a little disturbing when a space isn't well taken care of. Like I think like a lot of horror films do tend to lean into that, where like maybe the wallpaper's peeling, or the carpet's coming up, or like
Or there's a doll missing an eye in a weird rocking chair.
Yeah, there you go.
A doll missing an eye or
Yeah.
a weird rock.
Yeah.
I feel like can be something symbolic there with like things not being quite right in the space that can kind of having an eeriness when you're walking into the space, or like when a character's walking into the space. But
Very interesting. One thing I saw that David Fincher had mentioned in the behind the scenes footage for, what was the one with Jake Gyllenhaal and the killer he chases around?
Nightcrawler?
No.
oh, I think I know.
Prisoners?
No, it's a David Fincher film, and it takes place in New York.
I have the internet. I could just.
And he's Son of Sam.
Okay.
All right, is that what it was called? Son of Sam, I'm pretty sure.
Man, you think you know how to spell Gyllenhaal? That's Zodiac.
Zodiac.
Oh, Zodiac.
Zodiac,
Okay. Yeah.
So anytime you're getting closer to what someone thinks is the killer, David Fincher shows an exposed light bulb. So he says, pull the lampshade off. Whatever the shade is, I want to see a light bulb. I either want to see it hanging, or either want to see it on a lamp. He was like, anytime I want the audience to feel uncomfortable, I'll give them a clue something is about to happen that's bad. Because like, I show a light bulb. And it was like, he was talking back and forth in the behind the scenes, and whoever he was talking to, I think it was with his editor, and he was saying, he was like, I think in the scene in Psycho where we reveal the corpse in the chair, that Alfred Hitchcock film, there's a bulb that somebody bumps with their arm, and the exposed bulb swings in the room, and it pushes these shadows back and forth.
That's cool. Yeah.
And David Fincher was like, I think everybody has that in there pop culture conditioned brains now. It's like, so I've learned to use that because that's film language to say, this is the scariest part. And I was like, wow, what a crazy, attention to detail.
Yeah.
You know?
That is very cool. Yeah, definitely like not diffusing a light and making it harsher can have that effect for sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then, like you're saying, like having a harsh light is always a little more severe than having a nice, soft, beautiful light. And I think like as humans, we know what hard light looks like, and it looks like an exposed bulb. So even if you're not seeing the, the hard shadows at an exposed bulb, just seeing the exposed bulb maybe tells the audience, this is a harsh light scenario.
Yeah, for sure. That's such an interesting point. Yeah, I've definitely worked with DPs who have like preferences on like lampshades and stuff when you're lighting the set practically.
And I've heard another thing about the guy who did the lighting for the film Dragon Tattoo. While we're talking about Fincher, where he was saying you could tell the entire story from the lampshades. He was like, if they went with the production designer and every single character, he goes and he interviews all these people, and they were like, we went on a lampshade hunt to make sure everybody's lamps described who they were.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I've definitely worked on projects where like people want to reuse lamps on different sets. And that
because it's
should
cheaper.
save money for sure. And that's great. But a lot of times different characters won't necessarily buy the same lamp. They won't have the same style. And like a lamp's another expression of the character's style as well.
Yeah, and as a director or as a producer, you can definitely get tunnel vision and be like, just reuse the lamp. That's fine. And then somebody's going to say, hey, that lamp doesn't match the character. And it's going to be like, well, no, you're right. You know what I mean? So I'm going to have to make a bad decision here and use the wrong lamp, or
Sure.
we're going to get some money.
And it's fine to do that sometimes, right? Like if you're on a budget, like you just have to decide what's important to you. Like I would maybe make the choice to reuse a lamp if it was more important to spend the money on something else that said more about the story, especially if the lamp were just going to be in the background versus foreground. So, it's sort of a lot about knowing your story well and knowing what's important to pull out too.
Rose has another question here. She says, what have you learned from being a production designer? And do you have a favorite job or a favorite memory?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks, Rose. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've learned so much. I've learned a lot of practical things, like which tape to use when, like, what.
Wait, which tape do you?
Yeah, you want to know that? I mean, I love painter's tape. It's great.
I love gaff tape.
Gaff is really good. A lot of people in art department, I think, like their favorite tape is Butyl, which is like more of an industry tape. I don't think you can buy it just at any hardware store, but if you're in LA, you can find it, and you can probably order it online as well. I like industrial Velcro a lot. People in the art department tease me about that sometimes because I like it a little too much, but it's really strong and you can pick that up at a hardware store. So if you're in a pinch, then and you don't have time to make multiple stops, it's good.
So what you've learned from being a production designer is
all about
you
tape.
need to have the right tape for the job, or
Industrial
velcro.
There you go.
These are great.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the job is making
Critical thinking.
a temporary room and making it look permanent, making it look like it's been there for a long time. So you have to kind of know the right temporary tools to give the permanent look, and tape's a big part of that. You can't always put a nail in the wall. It depends on kind of the rules of the location. Yeah, it's easier to put a nail in the wall sometimes, but you're often not allowed to.
Yeah.
Tape's a big deal in the art department. But yeah, I feel like a lot of what I've learned also is where to shop, which prop houses are good for what, or which thrift stores in town have the best deals, or I've even learned kind of where to get free stuff sometimes when I need it if I'm on a low budget project.
Free stuff is awesome.
Yes.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like a little bit romantic to me if you were to shoot outside of Los Angeles, if you were to relocate to a completely different new town, it would almost be part of your job to go into their thrift stores and go explore their local economy and see what resources are out
For
here.
sure. Yeah, you have to know the stores where you're shooting, or if you have enough budget to bring stuff in from other cities, you can. Like, I know people who have shot in other cities that will still rent from LA prop houses if they have like a truck and, you know, those kinds of resources. But yeah, a lot of it is knowing where you live and like what stores are around and getting to know them.
So if you were to work on location outside of Los Angeles, so you get to the hotel, you know, you put your stuff down, you settle in for the day, do you go out and start just exploring or like window shopping and like figuring out like where you're going to start pulling things from?
Sure. I mean, I think it depends also on how much time I had, because I think if I had a lot of time, I might just kind of hit the main streets and then spread and kind of out from there. But if I didn't have a lot of time, I'd probably kind of, you know, get some advice. I'd see if I knew anyone who had shot there before, and I'd hit probably the recommended places first. And then I'd also probably do a bit of research before I hit the town and started walking in places. I might call places first too, if I didn't have a lot of time. You know, if I'm looking for something specific, I would probably call a few places and make sure they had it before I went in. But if I'm just kind of looking to fill some rooms and looking to do a lot of sets, maybe I would go in. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
So the other half of Rose's question was any favorite jobs or memories?
Ooh. I mean, there's so many that have been fun. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's always nice when you can like work with people you know well. I think that's always really like a perk of the job. I mean, it's great either way, but you know, when you have like a shorthand with people and you can communicate easily and quickly, I think that's always really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I worked on like a project where I got to shoot on a bunch of stages, and it's fun when you can shoot on stages. I mean, like it's also fun when you can do a location from
When you're saying stages, you're not talking about like a theater stage. You're talking about shooting in a studio.
Yeah, like
so
on a
you're
studio.
building your set in a studio, as opposed to like if you have an apartment, instead of just going to an apartment and shooting in an apartment, you're building an apartment in a movie studio, and that's what you mean by working on a stage.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, so there are a lot of stages in LA that you can kind of pull from. And like those are fun too, because you can be a little more flexible sometimes if they already have a lot there that you can use, and you can kind of pull from sort of the resources they have as well. It's neat. Yeah.
So that's some of your favorite memories are working with close friends on stages, is what you're saying? That's kind of your favorite experiences?
I mean, maybe not favorite, but yeah, that it's fun to do that kind of stuff for sure.
It does sound nice
And
because you're in air conditioning. You're probably working
I
the
love
9 to
AC.
5.
I love AC.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's fun when you can do something period, like creatively fulfilling, or it can be fun to do like sci-fi as long as you know, have the money for that. I worked on a project that was sort of a sci-fi music video, and you know, my job on that was I was like shopping, so I got to drive around town and just like go to the places that sell like just black cables. And like, I don't know, there was something kind of fun about that, like a little Easter egg hunt. That was my first time going to prop houses that had like specifically sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
And like, so it's fun when you work in a new genre and you get to explore a new space, because, you know, a lot of the prop houses I know are because I've worked in something in that genre before. And so when you get to try something new, you get to like get to know new places.
It is interesting though, because essentially your job is to create something that's never existed before and be a futurist almost.
Yeah.
And like, if this is true in the world, then this must also be true. And how do you find?
Sure. There's so many things, you know, that could change if your characters are different, right? Like you know, doorknobs are where they are probably because like they're around like hand level for most people, right? Like,
Yeah.
But like if someone's anatomy is a little different, then your door is going to be different to fit the anatomy. And like a lot of stuff
That's some
is
Tim,
like that.
there's some Tim Burton-esque thoughts there.
Sure.
And they redefine the door based on
Yeah, I saw something even also about like Wicked recently where like the cop that like the goat character holds, like, is not, the handle's different than normal because it fits the anatomy of the character. And like that kind of stuff is really interesting. Like, you know, when your society is different, like your space is just going to be different. And yeah.
Like the 3 seashells from the
From Judge Dredd or something. No, wait.
maybe it was
Demolition Man.
Demolition Man, where in that particular time he goes to the restroom and instead of having toilet paper, they have 3 seashells. And he keeps asking everybody what the 3 seashells are for, and they just keep laughing. He does it.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, totally.
if you know, the environment evolving around the characters, you know.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, definitely like sci-fi and kind of those kind of genres can be fun for that reason, or like fantasy.
I want to say thank you, Phlogiston, for following us. I saw that they followed earlier. Maybe they're still in the chat with us. If Phlogiston, if you have some questions, or Esteu or Rose, we will be rounding out the interview here shortly. I think maybe we can play some of the games maybe that Derrick has set up. And before we get there, usually a lot that I try to emphasize here is about how a lot of what we do as artists is self-expression. We kind of forget that we get kind of caught up in doing a job or doing something for a grade or for a deadline, and that we forget that a lot of this is self-expression. And even when you're like, hey, I'm going to define something to express a character, like there's a little of you in that, you know, and I wonder if you could speak on maybe a little bit of how like you do express yourself through your work, and also how maybe that ties into mental health, or if you're having a tough time or a tough day, like sometimes you can go get lost in your work, or you can take that energy and put it into your creative work, and maybe how you have experience with that or something.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's always easier to do the production design when the story resonates with you, and when you can find pieces of you in the characters, or pieces of what you want in the characters. So yeah, there's always like a little, ideally, like you're always working on stuff that you can relate to and that you can bring yourself to. It's definitely harder, you know, if you're working on an ad. Ads are nice, they're cushy, but like, you know, they're definitely not as creatively fulfilling because you're often not connecting.
I try to look at it as the difference between making art or making design. And like sometimes when I'm making design, it's not always so it's self-expressive. I might not be able to vent my day on a design, but sometimes when it's art, part of that is,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And like if the theme resonates with something you're going through right now, you're definitely processing that through the story in some way. I mean, I think that's a big reason we do it. And yeah, I don't feel like I could do anything else a lot of times. Like it's important for it to be meaningful, and it's important to work on things that matter to you, you know?
What about a little bit about like a community that you built here or that you found through this kind of work, and also maybe some other creative outlets you have? Do you draw, or are you a musician? Or I know we talked about that you're also a writer.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely built like a nice community here. I think you kind of meet someone on every job, or like, you know, you start to kind of like, the more you work, you just kind of start meeting people you click with. Like the nice thing about like this industry is you do get exposed to so many different people, because on every job it's a new set of people. It's hard sometimes because like you get really used to seeing the same people every day, and if you like them, it's hard to say goodbye. But the nice thing about that is like, you know, you get to kind of build a lot of people like into your network and your community because you're meeting so many people. And then for my outlet, I do pottery usually. A lot of
Very
pottery.
cool.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I focus more on hand building, not as much on throwing. And yeah, I mean, I just sort of play, honestly. I don't usually go in with a specific thing in mind. And a lot of my work ends up being like pretty geometric or like weird shapes. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of vases lately. I think like I've been able to go in more days in a row, and with pottery, it's easier to build something bigger if you're able to kind of be consistent about it.
Do you find like that's kind of how these days you're venting? You kind of get things off your
Definitely.
chest. You have a tough day. You go home. You sit and you focus on
Absolutely.
potting.
Yeah, it's definitely like a very calming thing. If I'm having a day and I do pottery, a lot of times like I'll come out the other end feeling pretty calm, you know?
I have a question that not about pottery. I'm sorry, but
How dare you.
but I was also thinking like with all of your like set design knowledge, production design knowledge, and your attention to detail building environments. And maybe this is personal, you don't have to answer it, but how do you choose to decorate your home space? Like, and have you made any decisions that you probably wouldn't have made had you had not gone into that like line of work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have stuff that I love that I bought, like and I probably am pickier about like my furniture in a lot of ways. I mean, some of it is just like at the time what was cheapest, and some of it's like, you know, stuff I got custom on Etsy, depending on, you know, how things were going at the time. But like, I think I'm also a lot less precious than I would have been, because it's not the only space I have. You know what I mean? Like, there are endless spaces for me to decorate. So like my home space, I actually feel like there's a lot less pressure on me for it to be perfect, because like something else is going to have to be perfect. So it's nice for at home to actually have less pressure. I do know production designers who are constantly redesigning their home. I'm definitely not like that. I'm actually a bit more relaxed about it because of it.
If you were to like walk into your space, not knowing that you live there as a production designer, what would you say your space says about you?
Too much stuff. I have kind of a maximalist aesthetic, and it's very like eclectic. So I would say like you can tell I'm into design. Like one of my I have a bookshelf that's not rectangular. It's like, I think, I don't know, hexagons or octagons or something, and it's like cubes. Yeah, they're basically like cubes you can build into any shape, but they have like 6 sides instead, so you can kind of be weird.
Can you find those maybe?
Hexagonal cube? Oh, for everybody to check out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I was just gonna try to get Derek to. I know he said he had that game set up.
Oh, I see them. These are like geese?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Oh, that
Like
is
a honeycomb, yeah, vibe. So that's what I keep my shoes in.
a honeycomb vibe. That's perfectly
Yeah.
the way to describe that. Perfect.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I never would have. I think like seeing something like that in someone's home, you can tell they thought about it.
yeah.
Like they didn't get it at Target, you know? So I think there are elements of that in my space, or like the picture frames that I have are not like just standard wood necessarily, like things like that you can sort of just, you can get a sense that I care about design.
You went the extra out to pursue and find something
Sure.
specific
I
for
didn't-
you rather than whatever they have at Target.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but also like, yeah, I have maybe like too much art for it to be aesthetic on my walls, or like not for it to be aesthetic.
Well, that's
but
that's kind of an aesthetic now.
yeah, it's like I have gallery walls, but just because I found too much art I liked and I had to have it, and I ran out of wall space.
That's a justification for it. We'll call it a gallery wall.
Yeah, it's a gallery wall.
It's like me when I stain my shirt. I'm like, oh, I guess this one's vintage.
Yeah. There you go. It's part of the look.
All right, Derek, hit us with this game.
Okay, let's start off with something real easy.
No, I'm gonna miss
Viewers,
it.
viewers at home, if you can play along.
This is a vast room with long wooden tables.
Okay, so wait, here's the game. Derek's going to describe the location, describe the production design, describe the art direction, and we are going to try to guess what movie he's describing.
Yeah.
Based on the production design only.
Yeah. A vast room with long wooden tables, floating candles suspended above.
Oh, I know what it is.
Fantasy.
I got it. Harry Potter.
Yes. It's the Great Hall at Hogwarts.
Oh,
I may have been the production designer. at a
there you
couple
go.
films myself.
There you go.
Not on Harry Potter.
Say you guessed Harry Potter as well.
Yeah. Okay. And then the follow-up question is, if you could like redesign the Great Halls, what would you What would you do?
I need more production design question games. I want more production design film.
All right.
Gabe likes your game too much for you to ask that question.
The games are fun.
Okay,
We did them last time too, and they were fun. What was the last time? Clothing. He described with Carissa. He was describing the wardrobes, and we had to guess the.
Fun.
Oh, and then when it was Squeaka,
We did all the games.
he would describe the world of the game, and then Squeaka would guess what games it is.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Bright pastels everywhere. Plastic-like textures. Artificial beaches and pools.
Barbie.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gabe's winning the game.
Whimsical accessories, no real water, and an overly cheerful suburban layout was the Barbie land. Okay.
I'm on a roll here. I'm sorry.
No,
Try
you're
it.
good. You're good. I love having.
Okay, let's try something a little more general. A romantic, vintage-inspired jazz bar
Already got it.
featuring moody lighting.
Is it La La Land?
It is jazz club. I thought it would be a little harder because it's so.
You gotta jump on it.
Okay.
These are good.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Okay, here we go. A sleek, minimalist home filled with sharp angles, wide open spaces, a hidden basement, and a symbolic staircase dividing social class.
It's the Korean film by Jean.
Parasite?
Yes.
It is Parasite.
Nice. You got more?
I do, yeah, if you want.
One more. Well, then we gotta go. But
Okay. Picture a dystopian training facility with sleek metallic decor, futuristic
Blade Runner.
survival equipment, and an imposing digital scoreboard overhead.
Squid Game? Yes.
No. But close. It's kind of.
That's what must be the one with Jennifer Lawrence.
Sorry.
It's Hunger Games. Yeah, it's the Capitol Training Center or arena in the Hunger Games.
All right, let's do one more, and then we'll have to shut it down. If you have another.
I do. Okay, this one isn't going to be a movie. It's going to be a TV show. An 80s basement filled with Dungeons and Dragons props. Christmas.
Stranger Things.
Yes. Okay. Wow. All right. Fine.
It's almost like I'm obsessed with film. All right, guys, I'm gonna round it out. Sam, if you want to tell them any way to find you on Instagram or find some of your work, or if they're interested in asking you some questions about production design, if they're interested in being production designer, maybe how they can find you.
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm Samantha Duncan. Really easy. Duncan spelled Duncan. And then my website is samadunc.com, and there's a contact form there if you want to get in touch.
Very cool. I see that Astayu says y'all are good. Thanks for the stream. Thank you for being here. And y'all, I end up in these streams the same way. If you're having a shitty day, you have drama or conflict with yourself or your family or your job, don't forget that you can design a production about it. You can write a story about it. You can make pottery about it. You can write a song about it. But what you're not going to do is you're not going to take it out on yourself. You're going to give yourself some grace, and you're going to take it out on art. So with that, thank you, Sam, so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, we'll have you here again soon. Thank you, chat, for being here. Thank you, Derrick, for being part of this. And see you next time.